Well, my family, like yours, is grateful for those who produce family-friendly entertainment that is not only uplifting, but teaches the timeless principles and Christian character that are often so scarce in the entertainment field today. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Alone Yet Not Alone. Alone Yet Not Alone is uplifting and inspiring, grips the viewer, and encourages you to look beyond yourself and to invest in what matters: your relationship with God, family, and serving others.
There is a moment in almost every high-profile federal case where the legal system stops being abstract, where it stops being about lawyers and appeals and motions, and it becomes something much more concrete. For Josh Duggar, that moment arrived not with a gavel or a verdict. It arrived with a judge reading Josh's own words back to the court and then calling him not credible. Everything discussed in this video comes from public court records, verified news reporting, and official legal documents. Josh Duggar has been in federal custody since December 2021, following his arrest on charges related to the receipt and possession of child sexual abuse material. A federal jury found him guilty on both counts in December 2021, and he was sentenced to 12 years and 7 months in May 2022. He had been serving that sentence at FCI Seagoville, a low-security facility outside Dallas, Texas, and then quietly, without any announcement, he was moved. The Federal Bureau of Prisons does not announce transfers. They do not explain them. But what we do know is where he landed FMC Fort Worth, a federal medical center in Fort Worth, Texas, that operates at multiple security levels and houses a specialized population, including federal inmates with mental health designations and sex offense treatment programs. That is not a coincidence. That is a placement decision. But here is what matters most and what got overlooked in the noise around this transfer. Before the move was even widely confirmed, United States District Judge Timothy Brooks filed a ruling on Josh's motion to vacate his conviction. And inside that ruling, Judge Brooks did something judges rarely do so plainly. He laid out a timeline of conduct in Josh's own words and then found that Josh Duggar lacked credibility. Think about what that means. This was not a prosecutor characterizing behavior. This was a sitting federal judge, reviewing testimony and submissions from the defense, and concluding that the person asking for relief was not telling the truth. That finding matters far beyond the motion itself. What the court record shows is a pattern of institutional conduct that has been building since Josh arrived at Seagoville. According to reporting based on sourced information, Josh accumulated repeated violations during his time there. Contraband phones were found in his possession on more than one occasion. And one of the more striking details to emerge is that a phone was allegedly discovered concealed inside a hollowed-out Bible. After the Bible was confiscated, Josh reportedly requested a replacement. In the federal prison system, every violation accumulates mathematically. It changes what is called a security point profile, a numerical classification that determines which facility an inmate is appropriate for. Every time Josh picked up a new infraction, that number shifted. And there is apparently a threshold he crossed that made FCI Seagoville, a standard low-security, non-specialized facility, no longer appropriate. The Bureau of Prisons spokesperson, in response to media inquiry, confirmed that transfers happen for reasons including security reclassification, supervision requirements, separation concerns, and institutional safety. Reading between the lines of that statement is not difficult. Chronic possession of contraband phones at a federal facility is classified as a high-severity security threat. It creates the potential for unmonitored outside communication. It undermines institutional integrity, and it is exactly the kind of pattern that triggers reclassification. This is the part of the story that connects back to what prosecutors said at the 2022 sentencing hearing. Assistant United States Attorney Dustin Roberts stood before Judge Brooks and said something that was precise and deliberate. He told the court that in his view, Josh Duggar was likely to recidivate, showed no remorse for prior conduct, and demonstrated no capacity for accountability. He also told the judge directly that ordering treatment would mean little if Josh refused to engage with it. And then he said something that reads differently now than it may have read at the time. He said there has to be some awareness of a problem, and that awareness was simply not present. That was 2022. What has happened since then inside a federal facility has not contradicted that assessment. It has confirmed it. At FMC Fort Worth, Josh is not being placed into general population. According to sourced reporting, he is entering a segregated intake process that includes medical screening, mental health evaluation, and a behavioral compliance assessment. He will need to demonstrate a period of rule following before earning access to any general yard population. He is starting over no established relationships, no network, no institutional familiarity. And here is the thing worth sitting with. FMC Fort Worth is not a punishment facility in the traditional sense. It is a facility designed to house people who require more structured management, whether for medical, psychological, or behavioral reasons. The fact that Josh landed there tells you something about how the Bureau of Prisons now classifies his needs. Not violent, not dangerous in a physical threat sense, but disruptive in a way that requires more eyes, more structure, and a more controlled environment. What the judge's ruling and the transfer together represent is a legal and institutional record that is now publicly documented. A federal judge found Josh Duggar not credible. The federal prison system reclassified him and moved him. His own attorneys told media they had no prior knowledge of the transfer, which is entirely standard. Inmates are not warned ahead of time. The system simply acts. The broader question this raises is one that prosecutors flagged 3 years ago and that the record has continued to reinforce. What does the system do with someone who demonstrates consistently and repeatedly that standard consequences do not modify behavior? The BOP has tools, segregated housing, program requirements, restricted privileges, but those tools assume a basic responsiveness that the court record calls into question. Josh Duggar has an appeal still working through the system. He has maintained that he is innocent, and the legal process will continue on its own timeline. But what is already documented in court filings, in a federal judge's written order, in the Bureau of Prisons' own institutional response, is a portrait of someone whose conduct inside custody has matched what prosecutors predicted outside of it. That is not an editorial opinion. That is the record. And the record is public.